Hey guys, King of Trials here. Today I'm featuring the best Rogue Flurry build, which allows you to do 100-200k damage per hit easy, just like you see in this example right here. And now, let's get started with how the build works. Alright, so first we're going to start out with the equipment with their affixes. And it's going to be your offensive affixes. We're going to want increased critical strike chance, critical strike damage, increased critical strike damage with your imbuement skills. There's two different ones, your crit strike damage and your imbuement crit strike damage. You want physical damage, increased damage to close enemies, increased damage with dual wield weapons, increased vulnerable damage, damage versus stunned, damage versus dazed, and increased attack speed. You're going to want mostly the damage. Attack speed is just a bonus, but you want as much damage as you possibly can. Now we're going to go on to defense. You want life on kill, maximum life, elemental resistances as high as possible. You want energy cost reduction and an increased number of evades, which are going to come from your boots. And then you want cooldown reduction as an extra, imbuement skill reduction, and energy cost reduction on your defensive affixes. Alright, now to go on for the equipment. This is going to be really long. Well, not super long, but I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible for you. I already showed you what you want on your equipment as far as offenses and defensive affixes. For your aspects, you're going to want these. I'm going to go down each one. So for your helmet, you're going to want a smoke grenade at the end of dash. You can change this one if you want. I just like this one because we do crowd control with our skills. This is going to allow us to dash into opponents and stun them right away. So you can dash into your opponents and stun them right away. Or if you're going to escape, this guarantees that when you escape, you will be safe because you're going to daze everything ahead of you. So get it as high as you possible. As you see, mine is max. For your helmet, you want life on kill, as much resistances as possible. And as you see, I even have cooldown reduction on mine because I rolled it. So my equipment's pretty maxed out already, but just get it as much as possible, as close as you can to the description I made for your offensive and defensive ones. For your chest plate, you're going to want this one. You gain 50% armor, 0.50 for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage. This is what's going to allow you to live a lot if you're close to enemies, because you're going to get stunned by CC, etc. This affix for the Doom armor is just really good to give you that extra armor you get. 50% armor is a lot, and it's going to help you sustain if you can't happen to get out the way. And then you're going to want, again, as much shadow resistance damage reduction as possible. As you see, I have imbuement damage on mine, physical damage, as much as you possibly can to stack damage. Next, you're going to want a gauntlet with flurry. You can change this to another one, but for me, I have flurry on mine for encircling blades. I have attack speed, crit chance, lucky chance. Lucky doesn't matter too much. I just changed the other one for attack speed because it was worse. And we have crit strike chance. You want your crit strike chance as high as possible for this one, and for this one you want flurry. Get your flurry as high as you possibly can. This is one of the most important ones. I'm going to go this one last because temerity is very key for this. So we're going to go after this one. I'm going to review this one last along with my bow. So we're going to move on to the boots. For my boots, I have the lucky hit dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to a 40% chance to daze them. This is where you're going to get a lot of daze. So if you use puncture, which we're going to go for the ability tree, I'm going to show you, this is going to allow you to make your opponent vulnerable, and it's going to make everybody else around you vulnerable. And along with vulnerable, you're also going to be able to daze them. 45% chance is really high. You're going to notice it proc a lot. So you want this as high as you can on your boots. This one's also interchangeable, but this is a lot of crowd control that you can get, that you're going to be able to proc a lot. So I definitely recommend this one for your boots. For your amulet, we have the skills deal up to 30% increased damage based on your available primary resource. As you see, mine is maxed out, but this is really good because if you have max resource, this is going to allow you to just throw a bomb on your enemies where it's going to do a lot of damage for essentially just having a full gauge. So your first enemy that you go against, and it's still extra damage. Again, we're going to increase as much damage as we possibly can. This is a great one to have on your amulet just because 30% is a lot at max. And you still get extra bonuses even if it's lower, but still, that's a lot for an initial engagement. As you see from my affixes, I have dual wield weapons, I have imbuement skill cooldown, etc., damage reduction, energy cost reduction, resistance to elements. Next up for the rings, I have 2 rings. Both of them have increased crit strike chance, so to increase my crit strike chance as much as possible. Vulnerable, just damage on damage and damage to close enemies. As you want as much damage percentage as possible so that you could stack. For the imprint on this one, I have deal increased damage for each second you stand still. Now, you're going to stand still a lot when it comes to fighting elites / bosses, etc. Any little percentage matters, and up to 30% is a lot. So if you can if your enemy or your opponent stands still, you're going to see how much you're going to be able to do just by having a few seconds standing still. It's going to be very rare you're going to stand up to 4, but every extra percentage counts. That's why you want this aspect on this ring. For your second ring, you want attacking enemies with a basic skill increases the damage of your core skill cast by 10%, up to 30. So for your puncture, you're going to want to throw 3 daggers so that you can get your full combo points. If you don't have it, that's fine, but again, every extra damage counts. If you have your 3 stacked and you throw this onto an elite, you're going to do a ton of damage against them. And we're going to be throwing a lot of punctures anyway so that we can make our enemies vulnerable. So this is just really nice to have. We also have crit strike chance, like I mentioned earlier, damage to injured enemies, damage to enemies affected by trap skill. That one's not as important, the third one, but the second one I rolled really good, damage to injured enemies. For injured enemies, that's below 35%, so you're going to be able to shred enemies that are lower even faster. Next up, for your 2 daggers, I have Condemnation. This is an Ancestral. You don't need this one. It's really nice, though. Mine is very high. Those bonuses you have are just insanity. So damage with dual wield weapons, core skill damage, damage to close enemies. You don't need this one, like I mentioned, but it's really nice to have. Especially when you spend 3 points, you do 36% more damage. And 30% chance your base skill you could generate 3 combo points right away. This is going to allow you to stack a ton of damage, and it's just really great for this build. You don't need Condemnation. This is just what you're going to see it's very useful over time. Next, this is one of the key ones you really want to have. I imprinted this one on mine, but critical strikes with poison imbued skills have up a 10% chance to create a toxic pool that deals X amount of damage. That sounds cool, right? Well, this one's even cooler. Poison damage over 3 seconds to enemies within. So it does 3 seconds over 3 seconds, which is really fast. 1, 2, 3. If you happen to get stunned, this can possibly finish off whatever enemies are around you and just give you a lot of staying power. And while you're standing in the pool, your poison imbue skill has no cooldown and no charge limit. So for 3 seconds, you can imbue poison as much as you want. By using this build, I find myself hitting at least 3 imbuements. That's a lot, but it's absolute insanity with how much damage you can do, plus your imbuement percentage. So this one's very important. So make sure you have a lot of the affixes on mine have dexterity, damage increase, damage to first enemies, crit stack damage. This one's a very high roll as far as my ancestral legendary swords, but like I mentioned, this is an endgame build. But where this comes from is your poison imbued aspect. That's what you really want. And now for the last one, the reason why I want to explain this one last is because of how this build works. You're going to notice a barrier happen a lot when I show you the examples, but this is why this build is so crazy. You're going to need Temerity. So Temerity is a unique pants, and it's a rare drop, but if you do have it, it's nuts because it gives you a barrier. In itself, its affixes are super overpowered. As you see, potion drop rate, which doesn't matter too much because with this build, you're not going to actually use a lot of potions. But potions, you're going to be able to use them to your advantage. I'm going to show you an example. You have a lucky hit, and you have healing received, but the big one is its aspect. Effects that heal you beyond 100 life grant you a barrier up to 80% of your max life, and it lasts for 8 seconds. 8 seconds is a long time. Not only that, I rolled the max one right away. So this gives you more life 80% of my life right here. I hate math, but this would put my life at close to probably 1,000, close to 1,000 or 9,000, which means extra life with a barrier, and it allows you to stack with this armor and just gives you a lot of sustainability. However, just like with any rogue, you're bound, or anybody in general, if you get CC to death, crowd controlled, you're probably going to die. But this gives you a lot of staying power and a lot of opportunities to come back from dying. Now we're going to stack Temerity's aspect with this one with our bow. As you see, this bow I have is extremely insane. 54 damage to close enemies, crit strike at 60, 52% to daze, 60% to stun. Those are really high. But it's just if I do stunned or daze, which I have a lot for this build, and I'll explain that with the abilities coming next. But the big one here is the imprint we have. Deal X amount of damage while you have a barrier active. So, the reason why Temerity is overpowered is because as long as you have that Temerity barrier, which is going to last for 8 seconds, and it's going to keep on going as long as you get HP, which, because we get lifesteal this build, you're going to have a barrier on almost all the time. If you don't have a barrier, what you can do is just proc a potion, use a potion, and you get your barrier automatically. And with that barrier, with this imprint, we're going to be able to do almost 50% more damage just for having that barrier up, which is absolutely nuts. And this is for everything. So 50% increased damage while you have a barrier, it's crazy. For your gems, on your weapons, you want to have emerald gems, increased critical strike to vulnerable enemies. We're going to be doing a lot of vulnerability a lot with this build, so you want emeralds. And for this one, you want rubies. For everything else, you want rubies to increase your maximum life. This is going to proc along with Temerity to give you a lot of life to fall back on if you happen to get counter or hit. It helps you live a lot with this build. So I explained all the items right there. If you need any extras, just go back to this or just go ahead and ask me questions on the comments. But that's how everything plays out. You put all of this together, you have sustainability, you have armor, you have an insane amount of damage that just stacks and melts your enemies over time with this flurry build. Alright, now we're going to go over your skill tree. So, I had someone make a note that I didn't put how many points you have in each one, so I'm just going to tell you how many points you put in each one. But generally, there's only going to be one of them outside of your passives that are going to actually have more than one. For the first one, we have puncture. You want puncture because for puncture, it's the basic. It's how you build your combo points. This is why we're using the unique dagger. So you want to have a puncture, and then along with that, you want your modifiers of gaining 2 energy when it damages a controlled energy, and the one that makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. So you're going to want puncture, you want enhanced puncture, and fundamental puncture. This is the most important one because with the vulnerable for 2 seconds, we're going to stack it with everything else. We're going to stack it with another passive. So you're going to see how you're going to make one enemy vulnerable and you can make everything around you vulnerable when you flurry. Next, you want 5 in flurry. You want 5 in flurry. You want to max out flurry as much as possible. If you look at my damage, it's absolutely dumb. I do 15k per as my base damage. Or, not 15k per, but like with 3 points, I do up a max of 15k. So you want flurry as high as humanly possible with this build. Obviously, I'm level 90 with a lot of Paragon points, so yours might look a little less, but even then, you're going to crit like a monster. So again, just put 5 in flurry. Next, you want enhanced flurry. Each time it damages a vulnerable area, you're healed for X amount of your HP. This is one of the most important ones because with this one, you gain sustainability. This is why I like Flurry versus Twisting Blades, because you actually get your health back without having in your skill tree, so you don't have to do anything else. And then along with that, you also want Improved Flurry. So if Flurry hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. So you combined Fundamental Puncture, and then you combined this one, and you make every enemy that gets hit by Flurry vulnerable. So this allows you to easily proc your vulnerable crit damage and your vulnerable damage overall. Next up, for your passives, for your core skills, you want Sturdy. You need 1 point in Sturdy, but this isn't even the most important one. I just have 2 in here just because I have extra points. But you want 1 in Sturdy, and you want 3 in Siphoning Strikes. because Siphoning Strikes and Enhanced Flurry are what's going to give you a lot of your HP when you hit enemies. Because you're going to crit so much with this build, when you crit enemy, every time you crit, which is going to be very often with this build, you're going to heal 200. That's why you're going to see just how crazy it is that you can sustain with this build. Next, we're going to go on to your agility skills. For agility, you just want dash. Dash, we're going to combine this along with one of our with the aspects, like you saw with the smoke bombs. But this is just to escape and give you faster movement. You want dash along with modifiers of increased critical strike and slowing enemies. Honestly, you're not using dash a lot for this. You want to stand still as much as possible for your damage, so you don't really want to dash a lot. This is just so that you move faster and it gives you an escape if you happen to get too crowded or just boxed in by enemies. And then you want enhanced dash, and then you want discipline dash. So again, enhanced slash discipline dash, and then you just want 1 point in dash. Next up, we're going to have our passives. You want 3 in weapon mastery. Increase damage to healthy enemies. So healthy enemies are enemies with a lot of HP. Injured enemies are the ones where they're below 35%. So with this one, you just want as much as you can, just so that you get more damage, depending on the enemy you're hitting. So, and then you also want concussive to knock down. So after knocking down an enemy, you gain 12% increased critical strike chance against them for 3 seconds. This is going to go along with your poison trap, so this is why you want concussive. And then you want 3 on trick attacks. When you critically strike a dazed enemy, they are knocked down for 1.5 seconds. So the aspect you have that we have on our boots, the one that gives you that dazes, that possibly dazes enemies, you're gonna use that along with this, and you can knock them down, and then you can have concussive. So you're going to just proc critical strike chance against them. And then we have subterfuge skills. I still can't subterfuge. I just call it trap skills. This is literally just trap skills. So for this skill, we're going to use poison trap. You just want 1 in it. Poison trap's just here because we just want the modifiers. You're not going to really rely on this for the poisoning damage. You just want the bonuses that go along with it. But the added bonus is as you see, poison trap has a 30% to reset your imbuements cooldown skills. This is what we really want, because we want the ability to reset our imbuement, because this is what's going to proc along with our cold one, our cold imbuement, but we want it to for our poison imbuement as well. Even though we are abusing the infinite poison imbuement with no cooldown with our amulet on our aspect. And then poison trap knocks down enemies for 1.5 seconds. So you poison traps can knock it down, and then we also have trick attacks where you can knock down again for dazed enemies. So just plenty of crowd control for you to proc your crowd control damage. Next, we're going to go on to imbuement skill. I forgot about this, so sorry about that. So for the trap skills, we also have exploit. You deal 18% increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. So just more damage overall against enemies with flurry, and then you want 3 on malice. Because you're going to deal so much vulnerable damage on your or just make enemies so vulnerable, this is going to stack along with your vulnerable damage. So you're going to see just how crazy it is on the example of how much this stacks. So again, you want 3 on exploit and 3 on malice. Next, we're going to move on to your imbuement skills. You want 1 on poison imbuement. You don't need 5 just because we're not relying on poison damage. We're relying on the pure physical damage that we're doing. Poison is just a bonus. It's going to allow you to melt your enemies even faster, but that's not what's important for this build. So with poison imbuement, though, you want to use this along with that aspect I told you about on your amulet. That's going to let you just use this as much as you can in 3 seconds and just absolutely delete your opponent. Or just enemy, depending on what you have. Poison durations increased by 1 second. You want the enhanced poison immunity, and then you want the modifier as well, which imbued skills deal 75% increased poisoning damage. So this is gonna allow you to just go with your poison imbuement with the infinite poison that we're gonna do for 3 seconds with our aspect. This combines with this to deal a ton of poisoning damage. So you're just gonna melt your enemies. You want 3 on deadly venom, and you want 2 on alchemical. Accountial, I don't even know, dude. Like, spell it. They make this so. Why don't you just make it a simple one? Anyways, you want 3 on deadly venom just to increase poison damage. Again, just melt your enemies even faster. And then you also want 3 on alchemical advantage, just because you want 2% increased attack speed for each enemy you've poisoned. So this allows you to proc with your poison trap as well as your imbuement. So this is just going to allow you to attack faster. So next we're going to have poison imbuement. I have 2 in here. You just really need 1, but we want it because of the modifiers. You want it because at 30% to make enemies vulnerable, even though you don't really need to, because you're going to do it, just an extra 1 just to make them even more vulnerable, or just allow you to have that opportunity to do as much damage as possible. And cold imbue skills deal 20% damage to crowd control enemies, double this against frozen enemies. So this is what's going to be really nuts. So you're going to do a lot of crowd control with this. So when you have cold imbuement, it just allows you to melt enemies even faster. The reason you want this as well is because with cold imbuement, you can chill and freeze your enemies. Not only is it another CC, but it also stops annoying enemies that could possibly crowd control you to death. Because in Diablo 4, unfortunately, there aren't many ways for you, or any way for you to take off your imbuement, well, or just any pot that doesn't in general. You can't drink something to take off you being frozen. And you also want, for your passive, for Frigid Finis, you deal 50% increase in damage to chill bones. So you want this one as well for your passive. You don't need chilling weight. You're going to kill your opponents, so you're going to kill your enemies so fast you don't really need to lower their movement. So again, you want 3 on Frigid Finis just to deal more damage against your chilled enemies. And then you want Precision Imbuement. You want 3 on Precision Imbuement. Gain 9% increased critical strike chance. So with this, and not even with everything else, you saw with my equipment, I have a 43% chance of making of crit striking. And you're going to see it proc like mad during the example. Next up, we have ultimate. We're not using anything from our ultimate skills. We're just using something from the passive skill tree. We're using this one, Trap Mastery. When poison or death trap activates, you gain 12% critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd control enemies for 4 seconds. This is just giving you more crit. This is why we usually start off engagements with poison trap. Or while we're in the middle of our combo, we just put poison trap in general. So we get more poison strike chance, our crit chance, and the ability to just knock your opponents down. So more crowd control. And then for our passive, we use our key passives. We're going to use close quarters combat. The reason you want close quarters combat is just because of the attack speed. With the aspect we have where we gain the percentage of damage, we want to be able to get our 3 combo points as fast as possible, so that's why we want attack speed. You're going to deal so much damage here that using momentum or anything else doesn't really matter. So if this one helps as far as the increased energy regeneration and damage reduction, but the thing about it is that you're going to kill enemies so fast that you just want to be able to use this as fast as possible. Plus, the problem with momentum, it's just every 8 seconds, so it's not consistent. With close quarters combat, as long as you're hitting an enemy with flurry or your puncture, you're going to do really well. Precision, again, not really matter because critical strike damage up to precision, it's not going to matter too much because your next marksman skill is a guaranteed critical hit. It's for marksman. It doesn't do for your core skills. So this is for long range. Victimize, you don't really need it because exploding, again, you're going off of crit damage. You will never ever recognize that Victimize ever goes off. And exposure is primarily for trap skills. So we don't need a passive for trap skills. I'm explaining this because I had someone that asked me a question, why don't you use these other passives? This is because if you're using Twisting Blades or you're using Flurry, you just want close quarters combat. Attack speed kills opponents faster or enemies faster, and you're going to be able to just rack up a ton of damage like you're going to see in the example. Now for your specializations, you're going to want combo points. This is going to go increase your Flurry damage. 3 points equals more damage. And now we're going to go for a Paragon. So I already have mine all the way up to my 3rd board. If you're not up to the 3rd board, that's fine. If you're watching this video, you're probably past 50 already, or you're getting close to it. So just follow this general tree. But even at 50, you notice a difference, but it's not going to be a huge difference. You'll still be able to do a ton of damage at 50, and you're still going to be able to shred your enemies in front of you, just because of all the crit you're going to get. This is just a bunch of extra damage. This will help you get to those 200 and 200k plus 300 each time you use your skills, etc. But I'm just going to go over the board really quickly. For the first one, you're going to want your combat. You're going to want combat on the glyph socket for your first board. And notice how for glyphs, if you don't notice already, for glyphs, not glyphs. For glyphs, you want at level 15. With level 15, it turns into this big. As you see this huge cross right here. If it's not, it'll be smaller. So your glyph will be smaller if you don't have the level higher with 15 at max. This is why I say don't worry about it too much, but try to max out your glyphs as much as possible. Right here, we have the combat glyph just to deal increased critical strike damage, and if you have the cross big enough, you can restore 12% of your energy. So that's the one we have for the first one. The second one, we're following Cheap Shot for the legendary node. You deal 5% increased damage for each nearby enemy that is crowd controlled up to 25%. Because you're going to crowd control a lot, especially with daze, etc. and poison, you're going to have a lot of enemies that have crowd control on them. So this will allow you to do 25% for basically free, as long as you have this. Go up to the left. The left is going to be offensive side. So we're going to go up, attach this board, go up to the left, get legendary Cheap Shots, and go up to the left. We're not going to go towards the right. This is your damage reduction, etc. The point of this is to just do as much damage as possible. The only time you're going to go to the left, to the right, is right here. So we're going to creep up we're going to grab this legendary node, creep up to the left. You're going to make sure for your grab object you have control. So this is the crowd control board, and we're going to want to have crowd control on this socket. Once you have this over here, you're going to want to go to your left and get calculated. So you want to go towards calculated, and you want to get as many of these damaged crowd control enemies as possible. So go up to the left, get these three, and grab calculated. Next, you're going to move all the way to the right. The reason we want this is 50% damage to healthy enemies. This is a huge bonus. So this is if you have enough intelligence. If you have the intelligence board going down here, you should have enough to get this one. But you want Spearhead, because 50% is a lot overall. And you will give you a free 10% or 100% armor. Not 100%, 100 plus armor. Plus more damage to healthy enemies. So this just allows you, this board, the crowd control board, will give you a lot of additional damage to make it to the second board. I'm running on my third board. If you want to go further, for this one you want your imbued ones. The imbued ones is for your imbued damage. This is where you'll notice if you get to this board, once you use your imbuements, and you're going to see it on the showcase, you're going to do a lot more damage with your imbues. This is why you have cold and poison imbuement. And this is what we're going to use to take advantage of that item we have, which is going to allow us to have even more, just infinitely use poison imbuement for 3 seconds. But by then, they will probably be dead unless they're an elite, or if they are elites die pretty quickly too, bosses, or just those structures that have a ton of health. After you get this legendary node, you want to go all the way up and make sure you get your glyph socket and put imbued damage on it. As you see, I have 67 plus imbued skill damage, and it reduces the cooldown of your another one by 0.5 seconds. 0.5 isn't a lot, but you want to just get imbuements as much as possible to clear as many enemies as fast as you can. And as you see, I don't have my fourth board, but if you're curious for the fourth board, it's the vulnerable board. So for the first board, you're going to have your regular board. The second one's going to be crowd control board. Their crowd control board. Third will be your vulnerable. Third will be your imbued skill board, and fourth will be your vulnerable board. The reason you want imbuement before vulnerable is because your imbuement skills, these will stack way more than this board will. Just because if you look at the percentages, you only get 15% increase for 16 seconds versus the enormous ones you get from this board right here, where you can get 67% for just having imbued, and you get extra damage for the imbued. So you get 80 for this, and this you get 80%. Paragon boards are really complicated. Just follow this general line as you see here where I'm chasing if you want to go this route. But that's for the most part, that's it for the Paragon board. Now this is going to explain the combo. It's actually really simple. So one, you want to drop your poison trap in front of your enemy. Then you want to build your combo points to 3. Then you want to use poison imbuement and cold imbuement. It doesn't matter which one, preferably your poison one first, but it doesn't matter which combination you use them. You also don't need to worry about if you don't have both of them available. Just use one or the other just to do an insane amount of damage. So use one or the other or both, and then flurry, and then drop poison trap again if you have it. So again, drop poison trap, build your combo points to 3, and then use poison or cold or both, and then flurry. You don't even need poison trap. If you don't have poison trap, that's fine. Just keep doing your combo point combo, do poison then cold, and do it all over again. You're gonna see me just continuously just rip on my combo points and just do a ton of damage for my example that I'm gonna show you. Alright, so here's a few examples. As usual, I love starting out these videos by carrying someone through Elias. Well, when I can. So, I'm going to literally shred Elias in 30 seconds with this build, and I don't even get the poison pool, which gives you infinite poison. Just watch how fast we shred through Elias. The sustainability on this build is crazy. As you see, I'm not even dodging any of his attacks, and he's barely doing any damage against me. As we get him staggered, then we just finish him off, but which just absolutely nuts just how much damage you do. Here's another example using the skeletal constructs, the Harford Demise dungeon, and we're just shredding through this construct in less than, I'd say, 10 seconds. Watch me shred through all these elites. You're gonna see me also get in danger because of the crowd control, but you're gonna see how I'm able to play out the way and just how much that extra barrier really helps you. So right here, you're gonna see me get out the way, and I'm only gonna use one potion. One potion to heal, and I'm gonna be able to clean up all these elites really quickly and just burst through all of them. So again, crowd control, we all go through it. It's annoying as heck. There's nothing that stops it. But with this build, just watch your sustainability. Here's another example of me just shredding through a bunch of elites with this build. And I'm not even there's me initiating poison trap, and boom. Everything just disappears in less than 3 seconds. I would literally have to slow down just to show you how much damage you do overall. But as long as you have imbuement set, and you are able to even, this is how you proc, if you look below here, you see how you get that little circle around your poison imbuement. When you have that little circle, that little highlight that's running around like that, that means you have that infinite poison imbuement for 3 seconds. So again, if you look closely at it, I don't think it procs over here, but even then you might not even all 3. Just watch how fast you shred every elite and all the enemies in front of you to oblivion. And I come out to barely even unscathed. This is Blinding Burrow's Nightmare. So this is 9 levels above me, and look how fast the elite dies. Mind you, those infected villagers take a long time to kill. But with this build, we're able to just literally go through this entire dungeon, despite the fact we're getting poisoned to death. Look at all the poison damage you're getting, and you're still somehow you're alive. So me, I'm running through to destroy the damage-resistant aura enemies, and I'm just shredding through this entire line, and I'm not even moving out of the way of the poison. It's nuts. As soon as I exit, you're gonna see me pot up, but look, I was just absolutely nuts just how great this build is. Here's another one of these elites. Watch how he disappears in 5 seconds. Well, not even 5 seconds, more like 2 seconds. But just you see how crazy that this build is with dealing damage, keeping you sustained, and just absolutely deleting all of your enemies. The reason I like that, Twisting Blades is the most popular build, that's a fact. But with this one, you're able to just literally sit in front of your enemies, do minimal dodges, you don't even need to use Death Trap, and you just shred your enemies like a hot knife through butter. It's absolute insanity. Anyways, do me a huge favor, please like and subscribe. Again, this is an endgame build, but if you like using something other than Twisting Blades and something that doesn't require you with a cooldown, this one is just absolutely nuts. You can sustain. This is a nightmare, mind you, at 9 levels above, and I'm just shredding through my enemies like butter. And I'm never in any danger. So, again, please do me a huge favor. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you like this video. And I will see y'all on the next video.